not so big, you get lost. Not so small, you miss out. It's home to 40,000 tertiary students, 1,000 PhD scientists, and one of the most beautiful rivers you will find anywhere on Earth. It's a place where kids can be kids, and people with wildly diverse stories can find a home. Welcome to Finding Home, Hamilton, New Zealand.
Exercise is really important for me because I know in the long run it's going to help you live longer, and nutrition is really important for me now, especially for me and my family. I always believe that everybody should be doing something that contributes to the community.
I think we've probably fostered about 20 children, and we've had children that come in with cigarette burns under their nappies, and they come in as stiff as boards. If you can help another person, well, that's good, you know.
The baby bank's been running here in Hamilton for 6 years. We get a mixture of second-hand clothes that have been given to us and new clothing. We put packs together of about probably 4 or 5 outfits of clothing. As we get a request from somebody in the community who could use those clothing, we then go and deliver those to homes.
I could have killed 4 people. I was on police 10-7. Well, once you're on there, you're on the run, man. You're fully running. Man, I realised that you can't even go to the supermarket without someone recognising you from last night on TV, you know?
Once you've crossed that line and you've started, whatever it may be, whether it's a drug addiction, whether it's a gambling addiction, once you cross that line, then there is no turning back unless you come to the stage in your life where you realise the hopelessness and despair of your life and you cry out for help.
I'm Tracy Craw, mother of 4, and I work in Hamilton as a midwife.
Let's have a look at your tummy button, hey?
I always wanted to be a midwife. It's just always been in me and just something I've always wanted to do. I remember growing up, we lived on 10 acres and we had quite a few animals. I had a pet guinea pig at one stage, and I used to try and guess how many babies I thought she'd have, and so I suppose that's where my love of babies and new life came from. My sister Sharon is my youngest sister. We're pretty close. We've sort of done the same sort of work in our lives. We've got kids similar ages, and so I've spent a lot of time together. Growing up, I remember her bringing a stray puppy home. She's always found animals or things in need and just loves to care. She's a really embracing, sort of nurturing person.
It's kind of funny because I don't think there's really anything that made me decide that I was going to be a nurse. I was just always going to be. I like helping people out where I can, and it was just natural for me to fall into nursing.
As a child, unfortunately, I came from a very dysfunctional family where my father had a problem with alcohol and gambling. It wasn't very good memories because, unfortunately, he was a wife basher and abused my mother continually, and so memories of my childhood were affected by his behaviour. I really didn't have a father who loved me, and so I really didn't know much about love in my life. I started gambling at a very young age. My father, the brief times that he spent at home would be listening to the races on a Saturday, and so I became very interested in the patter, I guess, of the commentator. We used to have a poker school at our place every second Sunday night, and sometimes my mum was making a supper for the poker game. She allowed me to play in the game, and so that was very exciting. You don't know that you have an addiction until you start gambling. And so once I'd crossed that line, even at a young age, that addiction had kicked in and taken over control of my life. Once gambling takes over control of your life, It becomes hugely addictive and you have to gamble each day. When I was gambling, it was all about David. And sadly, it had a very negative impact on my first marriage. Our first child slept in a drawer. I never had any money to buy a bassinet or a cot because I gambled it all away. I turned to crime to fund my gambling.
Dennis Craw is a mechanic, an exceptionally good mechanic. But it's what Dennis does when he's not in the garage that is the most intriguing and inspiring part of Dennis's story.
I started about 1961 as a mechanic. I did my apprenticeship and I enjoyed fixing cars. When I started, I was very green. I didn't know the difference between a 4 and a 6-cylinder motor. 53 years I worked there and I've enjoyed it. I enjoyed the customers, but once again, my customers become my friends, and I've got a lot of friends. I could go anywhere and have a cup of tea.
My name is Anne Craw, and when I got married, I moved up to Hamilton here and been here ever since with Dennis for 51 years. Got married March 23rd, 1967, and we moved into a nice new house that he'd been building up here for the last 19 months. We've got 4 beautiful children, 2 girls and 2 boys. When the children got to teenagers, I decided to foster children, and I used to do it through Parent Line, 0 to 1-year-olds. I would say we've fostered about 15 to 20 children over the years. It was very frustrating for me. One mother tried to suffocate her little boy 2 or 3 times.
We've had children that come in with cigarette burns under their nappies. The saddest thing was when she takes that baby back to the parent and he just stiffens up and starts screaming. And that's pretty tough. So we had kids for, I suppose, 4 or 5 years.
I had a lot of children, but I stopped when I had this dear little baby given to me, and the mother said for me to keep her. We adopted her. And that was my youngest daughter now, who's just over 30.
Dennis and Anne's love for fostering children impressed one little girl so much that she decided when she grew up, she'd be a foster mum too.
I must have been around 10 years old, and I remember being very excited to see Dennis and Anne, to see which baby they had or which child they had this week, and knowing from the age of, 10 that I one day wanted to be a foster mum. When we got into a position that we could, we did foster, and we have fostered a few children. Oh no, now I'm gonna cry. Adoption and fostering children is really important because we all deserve to be loved. We all deserve to have a place to be and a place that we belong.
Charlie is fit, really fit. But no one who knew Charlie as a teen could ever have imagined him as a strong, healthy adult living a vibrant life.
Exercise is really important for me because I know in the long run it's going to help you live longer. It's going to help you fight disease better. And nutrition is really important for me now, especially for me and my family. I always believe that everybody should be doing something that contributes to the community. I started working at the Cancer Society about 2.5, going on 3 years ago. Oh, absolutely. She's made a huge change to our structure and everything. The purpose of the Cancer Society is to help reduce the incidence of cancer within our communities. One of the good things about working at the Cancer Society and our department in health promotion is that we get to have the opportunity to educate and go into the community and teach people about how to reduce their risk of cancer, plus being able to help Māori and Pacific Islander people because there's a high needs there and they seem to be the ones that have been affected the most. Really passionate about health and fitness as part of my lifestyle now, but it was never always like this. I grew up in a home where my mum was a solo parent and she struggled on her own and raised me and my little brother. By the time I was about 11 to 12, I started getting into a bit of trouble. We'd started drinking things that were poisonous. We got into sniffing and smoking anything you could think of. I remember being third form and having to smoke a whole bunch of weed just before I went to school. By the time I was about 13, we were involved in gangs. Multiple times we've been involved with guns being pointed at our heads and threatened. I've actually seen my mate get shot in the head. Well, to be honest, I never really felt love whilst I was growing up. We tormented things, we tormented each other, we tormented animals. It was very cruel. It was very hardly ever that we really smiled. Everyone just looked around really dark.
When they were sisters growing up surrounded by animals, Tracy and Sharon loved to care for anything small and vulnerable. Today, that love expresses itself in a whole new way.
When I worked in the delivery suite area, I saw babies going home just in singlets because that's what they had in a blanket round the car seat. We know that at-risk babies can easily drop their blood sugars. We're trying to keep babies warm to try and prevent this because we know that there can be long-term developmental delays. When we have so much extra clothing in the community, why not try and direct it in an area that is needed?
We started it off because we felt passionate about this particular area, about babies and newborns and their families, and just wanting to provide some assistance. When we're helping each other in the community, it connects us with each other. Oh, it feels great just to be useful, to be helpful, to meet somebody's need.
It is well known that in New Zealand there is child poverty. I've seen it as a nurse. You know, in New Zealand we talk about our poor housing. The housing isn't something that I can go and fix, but giving a pack of clothes to these families to keep their children warm is something that I can do.
To accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.
I remember one night that 4 guys broke into our home and held a bayonet at my throat, and they knew that I'd had money and said they were going to kill me if I didn't tell them where the money was. In a week I lost my job, my marriage ended, my wife paid me out on a house that we'd owned. I remember going to the Tauranga races the next day and losing it all, and so I'd lost my wife, my job and my house. I actually stood on a bridge looking down and thinking, if this is what life is about, I might as well just jump off. I never knew what love was as a child growing up, and in my first marriage, sadly, I didn't know how to be a father or a husband or how to love. It wasn't until I really met Jesus that my life changed, that I recognized that he saw me worthy to love. And here he was, he had taken this person from out of the world who certainly didn't love him and who didn't know how to love. And he showed me really what love was and infused that into me. And so then I was able to love my wife, to love my children, and to love other people.
The wonderful part about this program is that there is somebody there who I can ask for help.
David thought there was no way out. But he hit the jackpot of life when he found the answers to his addiction. When David found love, he lost his gambling compulsion. And so he organised Gamblers Anonymous meetings to share the freedom love had given him.
I first met David through Gamblers Anonymous 12-step recovery program. There's been a lot of times in my life where I've been in some pretty dark places, and David somehow was always there, whether it was a text, a phone call, or turning up at my house when I'd locked myself away in my little cave, and he just knew when to turn up at the right times.
Six years ago, Chris Ward moved to Hamilton after having his skull fractured by thieves stealing his tools. The traumatic brain injury changed Chris's personality, and that change led to unimaginable tragedy. But when Chris moved to Hamilton, he met Dennis, and that meeting transformed everything.
It was the 6th of December 1992. I heard a noise in the night in my garage, and my garage was underneath the house. So I run down there in my underpants, and I seen 4 people. They were burgling me, and then I just grabbed something and attacked them. I just triggered, you know, like, I've got to protect myself, my house, and my girlfriend and her mum and that, you know. And 3 of them went to hospital, you know, and the 4th guy was in fear for his life, he reckoned. So that's why he smacked me over the back of the head with a hammer, you know. I wasn't an angry person beforehand, but brain injury can do that to people, and unfortunately it happened to me, and I went off the rails. My violence propensity is through the roof, I've been told. I just go out and want to kill someone. There's one man I actually ended up putting a gun in his mouth for telling lies to me. I loaded the gun too. Hooked up with the mongrel mob. They were like a family to me, you know. I was in search for a family, in a sense. They were my brothers. In 2007, some people owed me some money from a renovation I did at their house. I seen him at the pub, and he was there every day for 12 months. So I went in there and I just put it on him that if he doesn't pay me within 24 hours, basically, I'm going to burn your house down. So him and his mates laughed at me. You know, he didn't pay me, so I went and torched it. I could have killed 4 people. And then sure enough, I was on Police 10-7. Well, once you're on there, you're on the run, man. You're fully running. Man, I realised that you can't even go to the supermarket without someone recognising you from last night on TV, you know?
Chris found out that we had a church camp. He said, oh, I want to go to camp, because he'd been to a camp down the South Island with his girlfriend. We thought, hang, how are we going to have this joker still on parole, and we're taking him to camp? Man, we don't even know him, you know? And there's a risk value on that, but you don't know whether they're going to do a runner.
With Dennis doing that, it was probably one of the best things that's ever happened in my whole life. Just him coming to vouch for me at that meeting, because that was where I was most vulnerable. Without Dennis being in my life, I think I probably could have gone back to the gang, to be honest, really easily. Well, it's about your heart, man. And I'm learning that from Dennis, you know. I know there's love in my heart too. I know that now, but unless you feel it, it's hard to recognise it. For me, that old life is buried now. I wasn't expecting that I'd become family, and I don't think in our whole lives it happens like that. It doesn't, but that's the Lord right there. He put me in the right place at the right time for the right people.
I suppose helping people out is part of my nature, I guess. I just have a soft spot, I guess. I like helping people if I can.
Charlie thought he'd found what he was looking for when he started his own family. His children didn't solve his problems, however. They only made his problems harder to ignore.
You know, I had an anger problem and emotional problems that inside that hadn't quite healed, and I was trying to drown it out with alcohol and drugs, and so I ended up in the cells quite a lot. And then eventually my family was stripped away from me, and then me and my son started to fall apart. The older son, he started to get fearful of me. He didn't like the things that I was doing, and I could actually see some of the behaviours that he was portraying was similar to the ones that I used to be like when I was younger, and it really worried me. I'd I'd been looking at different churches, and eventually I came across the Adventist media on the television. Basically led me to the Hamilton Central Seventh-day Adventist Church. I'd been invited to a study group, and then when I walked in there, I met a guy, and as I looked at him, he looked at me, and I said, "You look familiar." And he goes, "Yeah, you look familiar too." I explained my story. I grew up in Huntly, and he said, "Oh, what part of Huntly?" "Oh, Webb Street." And I went, and he said, "Oh, I know Webb Street. I lived on Smith Ave." And I went, "Wow." I remembered one particular night, drunk, we'd gone up to this brick house that had a cross at the front of it, and we decided it was a cool idea to go and throw rocks through their windows and rip out the cross at the front of the house. These guys started coming out of the house and had a fight with these guys. And I said to him, "You don't remember two guys coming out, smashing your windows and ripping a cross?" And he looked at me clear in the eye and he said, "I do remember that." And I said, "Wow, one of those two guys was me." And he goes, "Before you carry on with the story, have you come to know Christ?" And I said, I can tell you now, I love Christ with all my heart." And he said, "Oh, give me a hug." The words can't express how grateful I am about how things are with me and my family at the moment. We've actually been baptised together. Huge blessing for me in my life. It's just brought so much peace having God in our lives.
So our baby clothes library is called the Welcome Baby Clothes Library, and it's located at our local church in Hamilton, the Seventh-day Adventist Church. For me, it's important to help people because I believe that's what I've been put here for, to be the hands and the feet of Jesus, and just to show that care and that love that He's shown me and that I can now pay it forward, sort of thing.
28 years now I've been involved in helping other people recover from their gambling addiction using the 12-step recovery program. On a Tuesday night, we meet at the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Palmerston Street. They graciously allow us to use their seminar room there.
I choose Hamilton Church because we are a group of just ordinary, everyday people doing life together.
It's a great church for giving. People just never stop giving. They give of their lives, they give of their talents, they give of the gifts that God has given them. I just recognise the love that flows out from people there to other people.
I tell people if they come to church, we'll have you home to lunch. The people there are very friendly people and caring people. If someone is in need, they'll give them help. We preach the gospel of Jesus Christ, and we're friendly, accommodating people.
We all long for a home, a place we're safe, accepted, loved and cared for. Why not drop by Hamilton Seventh-day Adventist Church on Saturday morning and have a chat with Dennis or Sharon? Share some time with David or Tracy. Relax with Chris or Charlie. There's plenty of room in their hearts and in their home for you. Because love is something that only grows when there are more of us to share it. Why not drop by this Saturday morning and discover the home that's been waiting for you all along?